watching or listening to true crime is an emotional regulation skill because it activates the system, like the anxiety or the fear, like the distress, but you're not close enough to it that it is your own. And then
Mhm.
being able to get some kind of resolution
It's
by
the
the end of the
catharsis part.
episode.
Welcome to the Clinical Tea Podcast, your monthly cup of news, pop culture, and mental health through a clinical lens. With your hosts, Chelsea McCarty and Heather McPaul, licensed professional counselors. Grab your mug and settle in. It's time for the tea.
Okay, so episode 4, here we go. I can't believe it's been 4 episodes already, Heather.
I know. It's exciting to see how people are responding to our topics.
Yes, agreed, which is a great segue into our topic today because it is a hot topic in pop culture, right? So today we are going to talk about true crime. Why are
Yes.
people so obsessed with true crime?
Yeah. And I think my first question, Chelsea, for you is there, what was the last, like, either documentary or podcast about true crime that you got obsessed with or watched or found interesting?
So it's interesting because leading up to this topic, you and I had talked a couple of times about doing this topic, and I'm so excited about it today because this is one of these things where you and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Where you maybe self-identify as a true crime junkie. I don't know. I don't want to label you, but
Yeah.
but you're into them, and I am so I that hasn't like clicked for me. So to answer your question, I don't remember the last like true crime documentary that I saw, but when I was thinking about our episode today, I realized that I do like a little bit of true crime, but I think I like the fictionalized versions of them. So to
Hmm.
answer your question, probably the last one that I watched was probably the one on FX about OJ Simpson.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah.
That was a good one.
Which was
You know,
fictionalized, right? Like based on true events, but more of like a drama than it was like here
yeah.
is just like here is the experience of that based off of the people that were involved.
Yeah. So let's stop for a second and just put out a disclaimer that this episode discusses murder, violence, and trauma. So please take care in listening to this. We do want to acknowledge the victims and their families, and we want to approach this topic with respect and empathy for the victims and their families. So I just want to put that out there because if you're not in the world of true crime, I may have a lot of explaining to do. Because there have been some very viral things recently, very viral cases of documentaries that have come out that have really caught the public's attention and mine as well, because of so many reasons, and we'll get into all those. But I think the last one that I got into was there's a podcast called Love Trapped. And
Okay.
shout out to the Love Trap people, because that is a very well done podcast about one of the guys from The Bachelor got involved with a woman who, man, really went off the rails, really intense mental health issues there. And it's actually an ongoing, it's an ongoing trial, and so I don't want to say too much because I don't want this woman coming after us. Because she's very litigious, and anyway, the story is that she has a history of getting men to believe that she's pregnant and she's not, and sort of using that to keep them in the relationship. And you know, my friend was like, I don't really listen to a whole lot of those kind of podcasts, but my friend was like, no, you have to listen to it. And so I started, and then she kept saying, I kept saying, dude, this is really fucked up. She's like, oh no, it gets worse. And like every episode, you're like, how could it get worse? But it does. It's a wild ride.
Well, and it seems like that is part of the draw, right? Like the suspense of it, the wanting to know what comes next. And
Yeah.
although this may be not my cup of tea or not my cup of tea yet, for those around me that are into it, that's what I hear. Like, oh, I can't stop listening or I can't put it down. Do you believe that? And I think the idea that this is not a fictitious story, that this is really something that happens, is very intriguing to people.
Yeah, there's sort of this cycle of suspense, dread, relief, catharsis that people go through while they're watching or listening to these stories, where that cycle is what pulls you in. It's like an emotional rush without it being personal, because it is real. And I think it, in some ways, it expands, not really the word that I want, but expands our idea of what's possible in a dark way. I do think that, and the title I want to give this episode is The Dark Side of Humanity, because I do think that everyone has at least a little darkness in them, right? The shadow selves, or whatever you want to call that has this wanting to get close to something without the risk.
Yeah.
Wanting to know, this morbid curiosity. And we see this all the time when you're on the highway, there's an accident, everybody slows down. It could be on the opposite side of the highway, but everyone's slowing down to see what happened. And so I think that's a very human thing, the curiosity of darkness.
The morbid curiosity.
Yeah. Before Love Trapped, I got caught up in a very viral case. Netflix did a documentary called The Crash. Have you heard anybody talking about that one?
And you mentioned it to me too.
Yeah. That was bonkers. And I think part of it is that it's hard for people to believe that someone would do something so intentionally to hurt other people. And it's come out in The Crash that, I didn't know this. See, some of this is like informational.
Okay.
Right? Like, I did not know there was a black box in a car.
Oh, I didn't either.
I know. You hear about the black box for missing airplanes and stuff like that, but you never hear about the black box in a car. And not all of them have it. I think maybe after a certain date they started doing that. But it gives them information about your car. And so from that black box, they were able to determine that Mackenzie Shirilla never once put her foot on the brake. She had her foot like the accelerator was down all the way the entire time when she crashed into the wall. So so they could tell that it was intentional because, you would have let up or braked or something, and then the accident could be called an accident. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or the crash could have been called an accident. But they can tell from that black box that is not what happened, which I think is very interesting, that's a thing. I don't think a lot of people know that there's a black box in their car.
No.
But I thought that was really
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather, how did you get into this genre?
That's a good question. I don't remember, but I've been watching these documentaries as they picked up momentum in culture for quite some time. I remember I must have just been like, I'll just watch this thing. Sometimes I just put something on for background noise.
Sure.
And then it caught my attention like, ooh. I've always been into serial killers. That's a funny thing to say out loud. I've always found them fascinating. So I think that one leads to the other, kind of, Not all true crime stuff has a conclusion at the end, which is a bummer. Because one of the things I think that keeps people watching is to get that sense of justice and rightness in the world. But I think a lot of people get hooked because sometimes you have to make your own conclusions.
Yes.
But let me go back to the serial killer thing. I've always been fascinated by serial killer brains. Because they do not operate the way that a healthy brain does. In fact, in fMRIs, you can see the difference, literally see it, that a serial killer's frontal lobe is completely black. It's totally offline. And that makes sense, right? Because that's where empathy, empathy, impulse control, decision making, Although decision making in a weird way, because they can be very smart about the things that they do to make the murder happen.
Yeah, to make these things happen.
And I'm probably on the... I'm probably not the popular opinion, as usual, about what should happen to serial killers. Like, I don't believe in the death penalty. First of all, I think that's an easy way out. But second of all, I think like we should be thoroughly looking at these brains and studying them, and less in a profiling way.
Yeah.
But more in a let's make connections to how this happens. I mean, I definitely think that it's the most severe trauma, the most severe childhood attachment trauma that you can probably have. I think Dollars to Jonas, you see a lot of people on that end of the serial killer spectrum having very severe things, like the worst things happen to them when they're... The only person that never admitted that was like Ted Bundy, and I think he's full of shit. And he was very charismatic, so it makes sense that he would probably not
admit that.
Admit that. But I think there was always this interest in like, wow, like that's like a different animal almost, like how does that work? And I think I've always been fascinated by brains in general, right? I think that's how I ended up being a therapist, but especially them. Now, I will say I would never want to get close to one to like actually do that research or treat them in any way.
Like, would you, like, how intrigued are you? Like, would you?
I like to watch interviews, but I don't want to be the interviewee, like, or the interviewer, rather.
You want to therapize them?
Well, and this is the point, is like, there's not enough research to even suggest that there's anything rehabilitatable about that. But it's interesting to think of, because as therapists, we tell people, oh, it's a brain wiring issue, like we can heal that. We can make new neural pathways. And it's interesting to think that there are some people that can't.
Yeah.
If that's even true, we don't really know.
So it sounds like your like opinion is because that that frontal cortex is so offline that it would be difficult to make new neural pathways versus like we talk about, I'm trying to think of more like brain-based disorders like ADHD, right? Where we can create those different pathways, or even trauma, creating different pathways.
Even neurodiversity like ADHD and autism, there's nothing wrong with that. There's things we can improve on, but they'll always be that. You know what I mean? They'll always have that particular wiring. And I don't know, because there are theories that those things are genetic, but that those genes are activated by environmental things. We don't really know, right? There's lots of theories that ADHD and trauma, and they make sense, but again, is that across the board? We don't know. So, but I think that studying how things go totally offline might give us some information about other stuff too. You don't know. But I find it fascinating. Just how do they live without those things, Especially like impulse control, I get it, but it's interesting to think about your impulse control goes offline and so you just kill people. Like, is that inside human beings and we just have this moral compass so we don't? And I think that's probably a premise for a movie like that one where everybody gets like a night to just go out and what was that movie called? I don't know.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. And they just go out and like wreak havoc, kill people. Yeah. So what interests the impulse, you're talking about the impulse control. What interests me is the emotional piece, especially when you talk about trauma and that people that commit these crimes, right, have had the worst traumatic things happen to them. And maybe it's the degree of trauma, they just get numb and like that part just goes away to it. But
I think that's an understatement though,
Oh, I have a curiosity.
Right, go ahead.
So you and I both work with people who have experienced trauma. And oftentimes my experience is that like guilt and shame run rampant. So for me, what is interesting is that like things like guilt, shame, remorse are just like not present. Like when you said that, I was like, wow, okay, that must be how. Because again, with the moral compass, right? Like those things, although negative, can be motivators or stop gates, right? Guilt, shame, remorse.
Yeah.
So that's what fascinates me even more than the impulse control.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes together, right? But it's interesting to think about what, since we all have this sort of morbid curiosity, is that all we get because we have these gatekeepers in there?
Gatekeepers, I like how you put that. Yeah. That's how we fulfill the curiosity.
And watch these things or listen to them too. It's I think there's well, first of all, on a biological level, there's and a neurological level, there's a hit of dopamine you get from being that close to threat with no real life risk. And I think I think that fascination, it maybe does fulfill something that we can't touch.
Yeah.
Don't want to either,
Yeah.
And it's always interesting how people, and talking about serial killers in particular, choose their victims. It's a lot of prostitutes, and I think that's thought out because who's going to miss them? You know what I mean? Like, but you can tell it's attachment based, right? And sociopathy is what? Antisocial personality disorder, which is part of the cluster B of personality disorders, which I keep reading stuff on this recently, and no one's saying this, but my theory is all of those cluster B, so antisocial personality, histrionic, borderline personality disorder. What am I missing?
Is narcissistic?
Narcissistic, yeah, thank you. All of those come from attachment wounds.
Absolutely.
It's just, I think of it as almost a continuum, right? So sociopathies or antisocials all the way on this end, whereas maybe histrionic or borderlines on this end and narcissistic somewhere in the middle, because narcissistic does go to that dark place sometimes for some people. And that's just my theory, but you can see it, in that some of these serial killer men are choosing vulnerable women, and there's definitely some mommy issues. Fun fact for you, there's a TV show called Mindhunter.
Yes,
Mindhunters?
I watched this one. This was yeah,
proud of you. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was
it's based on a true story, and actually, one of those guys wrote a wonderful book on that whole experience. The serial killer that they interview a lot, Ed something, I forget his last name. He's a real guy. You can take that show and watch their interview and watch the actual interview on YouTube, and it's like the acting is fantastic. Yeah.
okay. Because when I was
Ed
talking about
Kemp.
like the fictionalized, like that's why I gravitate towards that. And maybe it's just that it's like more interesting to me because it seems like there's more of like a
You're a little bit
storyline
more
of
distance
the,
from it,
yeah,
right?
and more distance from it.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when I try to watch something that's true, and I have tried before, it's like this visceral feeling of like anxiety and like physical like sickness. Like I guess
Yeah.
it's disgust. Like it's disgust and fear. And like, so I can't watch it. Like I can't hear it. I can't watch it. It's like this
Yeah.
emotional boundary for me. So I don't
I
have the
do.
curiosity. I have
Well,
curiosities of other things that are different than the life that I live, but not, yeah.
I do want to say that you're not alone in that, and that I think people do feel like it becomes too much. And so we do want to say to our viewers, if you find that it becomes too much, and because it can increase paranoia, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and that kind of thing. And so if it becomes less entertainment and more activating to your nervous system, then
May not be
you
the thing
just
for you.
should cut back on that and maybe not do that. Yeah. But so Ed Kemp, that's his name.
Okay, yes.
He actually, and this might creep you out a little bit, but he has such a wonderful voice that he actually is a narrator for many audiobooks.
Wait, I have heard this. I didn't
Yes,
know.
he does it from jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a fascinating character, but again, if you listen to his story, either in Mindhunters or his real footage, he had a very bad relationship with his mother. In fact, he killed her and did horrible things to her body. And then went on with this fetish to kill women and had a thing for shoes, women's shoes. That ended up being sexual, because there is something about cluster B personalities in particular where the boundaries get crossed in a way where sex and child needs they get weird.
Yeah.
They get
Good
crossed.
story.
Yeah. And obviously he's more in the violent area of that, but I have seen people, histrionics and borderline personality disorders, that look for child needs in their partner to be taken care of, that kind of thing. So again, that's on the other end of that continuum as I see it. But yeah, that was a good one, the Mindhunter.
Oh yeah, that was a great one. Yeah.
I haven't read the book, but I'm fascinated by that.
It's funny going back to like, how I was saying, I want to like reject it. Like I don't want anything to do with it. I was reading, because again, this is different than like what I'm interested in. So I'm intrigued. So like, why are people drawn to this? And one of the things that I read consistently was that for some people, it's a sense of safety. So understanding how somebody could get to that point, or understanding the risk of like, could I be a potential victim, gives a sense of like safety, control, and preparedness. And I found that interesting. Like
Yeah.
I could wrap my head around that.
Particularly for women. Particularly for women living in the patriarchy too. Like I feel like it gives women a sense of how to look for warning signs, how to protect themselves better. I always make this joke that when I go to the grocery store and they ask you to put in your phone number, I always do, because when they come looking for me, they're going to know exactly when I was at the grocery store.
Oh, because it tracks you.
It tracks the time and
time
everything. So yeah, I think it does make women think, and it's funny because I saw there's all these memes or videos of people being curious about why do women do that, like almost like the cat that's secretly plotting to kill you. And it was saying like, I think we just like seeing men who can like organize and be like follow through with a plan. Yeah. But it was funny because I was watching this one of my favorite, I shouldn't say favorite, but I don't know how else to put that.
To categorize that.
Yeah, documentary was The Staircase. And this was about a famous writer who was accused of killing his wife. And he took an Albert plea, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. An Albert plea means, okay, I'm saying I did this, but I didn't. I'm not admitting guilt, but I'll take the
punishment.
The punishment?
Yeah, okay.
Really, he's not in jail, but actually it gets you out of jail, I think. In any case, I don't think he did it. The Netflix documentaries tend to, I think sometimes they post before they have all the things and, all the information. So there's a lot of online, a lot of internet sleuths, But people were saying, like, so she was found in the bottom of the staircase, which is why they call it the staircase. She had some gashes in her head that she bled out, and she must have lost a little bit, like dizzy, or because she was losing blood, and so she fell backwards in the stairwell, and so she's found at the bottom.
Okay.
And they never found the murder weapon because I don't think there was one. He happened to be outside, came in, found her, called 911. In all of these, I'm going to take a tangent for a second. In all of these documentaries and things, they always play the 911 tape and analyze, do they sound upset? And I think this is such bullshit because you don't know how you're going to react. Your body goes into shock. So, let's talk biologically about what happens when your body goes into shock for a second. All of the blood from your head goes to your major organs when you're in shock to keep you alive because it doesn't understand
what's going on.
And when the blood leaves your head, you're not thinking clearly, Anyway, they all analyzed the 911 tape. I think he sounds fairly upset, but you're confused and you start going through this. Is this happening? Is this real? I don't understand what I'm seeing. In any case, the neighbor came out with a theory that I think actually is what happened. They have particular owls in their trees that are very aggressive if you get close to their nest. And I think she was walking from the back of the house, the pool, into the door in the house. And I think that one of the owls attacked her because it's consistent with the type of gouges in her head, and there were literally feathers in her fucking hands. But they totally did not
discredited that or dismissed it. Mm-hmm.
They dismissed it. They didn't even discredit it because that sounds crazy. But if you're losing blood and you fall backwards, you're going to create more trauma on your head. So I think that's really what did her in, is the falling after the. In any case, I was enthralled with this. And my husband comes into the room and he goes, if anything ever happens to me, all they have to do is watch your Netflix history. I just laughed.
Now, this one I'm interested in. So maybe as we're having this conversation, I'm learning more about myself. Maybe it is the violence and the intent is the part that I don't like, because this I'm intrigued.
Yes, and you know why? Because in some ways it gives us a dose of that threat, but it satisfies a need, or not a dose of the threat, a dose of
dopamine
threat without the risk. But it satisfies our needs to solve puzzles. Mm-hmm. And figure it out and suss through the evidence and come to a conclusion that feels right to you. And it's conversational. Like me and one of my friends, we watch these things together often and we'll come up with our own theories. Like recently, a couple weeks ago, we watched a documentary. I don't know if it was on HBO. I can't remember where it was, but it was called What Happened to Aunt Diane.
Okay.
And it's all about this woman who had kids in the car, her niece, nephew, and I think a couple other kids. And she was accelerating in the fast lane down the wrong side of the Taconic Parkway in New York, which is one of the most dangerous highways in New York.
Okay.
Because it's there's no light. Well, she did this in broad daylight, but there's deer. It's windy. It's crazy. And they were trying to figure out. So she ended up crashing because you're going the wrong way in the fast lane.
Yeah.
And only one child survived, and he's got a lot of medical problems. It's awful. But the whole time you're watching this, you're like trying to figure out what happened to Aunt Diane. And our conclusion that we came to, that we agreed on, was that she had stopped at a gas station for pain medication. She had chronic headaches and migraines, and she couldn't find any. So she got in the car and started driving. And there is a level of pain that people can get to where your ability to think clearly and logically goes out the window. And I think there was a bottle of vodka they found, and her blood alcohol level was through the roof.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. I think that she was trying to manage the pain and get home as fast as possible to get these kids where they needed to go. Mm-hmm. And in her pain, that's all she could think of. And and it got out of control. But it's intriguing to sit there and come up with these theories about, well, what do you think? You know, and had you come to that conclusion, you know, what's the evidence that strikes you the most? It's like being on a jury, like to think about the evidence that really hits home for you.
Yeah, it is intriguing. So maybe that's what it is. It's the violence and the details of the crime that I don't care for.
Yeah.
But the
Don't watch that one. Don't watch what happened, because
I'm intrigued.
So the staircase, you can actually just find a podcast if that feels better to not actually. They interview the guy, they follow the guy, and I'm sorry, I forget his name. But he's actually a famous writer. So some of it's reenactments, but you do see some crime photos. But don't watch What Happened to Aunt Diane, because it is the first that we were appalled. It's the first documentary we've ever seen where they showed her dead, like her.
Yeah.
Up close. And it wasn't particularly gruesome, but she was also, and this is a part of what I want to get into too, is like, she was also a victim in my eyes. Something was happening to her. There was never anything to make you think that she hated kids or wanted to murder suicide or, you know, nothing. I don't think there was anything malicious going on there. So I don't think they should have showed her, but.
So you felt like it was like a violation. Like she was a victim in this event as well. And it was, you know, violated her by showing that.
So, and, you know, usually they don't show things like that. And we couldn't understand what the director was thinking by putting that in. But I mean, there are a lot of people, including some of the family members of the children, that feel like, you know, and this is the thing, everybody wants to vilify people, and it's our quest for good and evil. We want to be able to put these things in a box, and I think to be able to be empathetic in any capacity, in that regard, in that kind of case, like people need somebody to blame when they've lost someone.
Yeah.
You know. And I think that's why we don't study sociopaths, because we want to villainize them instead of saying, because they're so awful, that we want to be able to say, no, you're evil. And I think they can't help it. I mean, obviously they don't have access to that brain. We need to understand how that happens and stop it from happening.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to feel empathy towards a serial killer, but understand that they don't operate like, I don't think evil exists. I think I think everybody's got lights and shadows, but that wanting to put people in a box like that disregards how they got to be that way. And the world is responsible. Like their parents, our culture, like all of these things factor into how that happens.
Yeah, and you don't have to have empathy to understand how somebody got to where they were.
But we don't. I think in Auntie Anne's case, like trying to villainize her just doesn't feel right to me because
Because you don't think that there was like intent to harm
no,
versus like a serial killer, there is intent.
there's intent, but I don't even think that they like. I look at them more as animalistic. Like they're such a primitive brain, you know. So intent's a weird word. Yes, they clearly pick out things, but like that's what a lion does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I think it's interesting for people to sort of check in with themselves and look at these ways in which we categorize people as good or evil, because that's not always like there's more to it than that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not that simple.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
When you're watching these things or listening to these things and you're talking to other people about them, do you ever get asked the question like, well, from a therapist perspective, what do you think of this? Or does your therapist brain like click on when you're...
Sometimes there's a particular one that I was watching that I often use as an example in therapy. So there is a documentary on Netflix called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. Don't watch this shit. Don't watch it. I've watched it, so you don't have to. I've seen a lot in my life.
Yeah.
Being in the military, you know, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And it's about a little boy who was raised by his mother and her boyfriend, who do probably the most horrific things you can think of to this little boy. He's 5 at the time that we start hearing about it. And I use him as a explanation for how children's brains operate when they're little, because this boy went through hell, and people knew it. At the bottom line, the thing is really about how the social work system is sort of broken, you know, because their child protective services had come over many times. And stupid shit like interviewing this kid in front of the mom. Well, of course he's not going to tell you the truth. He's scared.
Yeah.
But, you know, so everybody, I guess, tried to do what they could. But so the teachers had been telling Child Protective Services, because they're seeing him come to school every day with teeth missing from a baseball bat and cigarette burns on his head. Yeah, like that level of horrific shit.
Yeah.
And one day he comes to school like that, and the teacher's like, we're going to be making Mother's Day cards. Do you want to do that? And he goes, yeah. And this is the example I give to people, because when you're that little, you blame yourself for what happens to you. He did not understand. He thought, if I'm a good boy and I please her, she's not going to do this to me. And that's how people pleasing, I mean, obviously this is, I always say, disclaimer, this is a very extreme example, but that's how that happens. Honestly, if this kid had lived, he actually died of what they did to him at the age of 8. But if he had lived, he probably would have become a serial killer, because, I mean, eat cat litter, like horrible things, sleep in a box. It was just terrible, terrible, terrible. And there were other kids in the house that did not get that treatment. And so, of course, he's going to internalize as it's me. It's got to be something about me. But if I'm better, if I'm good, they'll love me. And so I do use as an extreme example of how, we can internalize things as a child, because your brain doesn't work any other way. Your brain's not going to go, well, I think my mom has a problem here. I think maybe it's everybody else,
Yeah, that doesn't come till later.
Right.
But
Yeah.
truly, like jokes aside, like that just ability to think that way doesn't come till later in life. Like
It can't. It can't.
It's not, yeah,
It's not developed
not
yet.
developed yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was watching that when my husband walked in the room and was like, "Why are you watching
Sounds
this?"
horrific.
And I'm like, "I don't know, but I can't stop." I guess I wanted there to be a happy ending, and there
Yeah.
wasn't one.
Yeah. Or closure, like something like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't.
happy ending. Yeah, because there was closure because his life ended.
Yeah.
But going back to like people wanting justice. Yeah. Which that is interesting what you said, because I thought about this independently, knowing that you served in the military and knowing that you probably have seen some messed up stuff and that you do deep trauma work. I was thinking like that's interesting to me that Heather like likes this genre, right? Because I think it could go either way. Like if you
Yeah.
see horrific things, you may not want to as entertainment or as like this is the show or this is what I'm going to listen to.
Yeah. I think it's almost the opposite for me. Like I don't like watching more cop centric stuff because
Yeah,
I was military police, so I don't like SVU or
sure.
any of these things. But it's more that I'm fascinated by these brains that people are walking around with.
Yeah, and I mean, you named that, right? Like understanding how their brains are just so vastly different than somebody who hasn't had their experiences. And that's the intrigue, it sounds like, of
Yeah.
understanding how not having that part of your brain active and functioning, how one then behaves and thinks about the world.
And I use that as an example too, in that like I treat a lot of people who have, a mother or father who's narcissistic. And, narcissism is in that cluster B group of personality disorders, and more towards the other, maybe the middle of that continuum, because their empathy is offline.
Yeah.
And, I hear people really go through it where they're like, well, maybe if I say it in a different way, or maybe if I do this or that, maybe they'll understand. And I'm like, if they're really a narcissist, they can't feel what you're trying to convey. I mean, narcissists can do what they call cognitive empathy, which means they know they should, but they actually don't feel it.
Yeah.
So they'll say what they know is the appropriate thing to say in this kind of situation. They don't actually feel bad. And that's hard to decipher, but I'm always like, you have to know your audience, because you just keep, and you see this in court cases too, where they're like, I just want you to be punished and all of these things. And it's interesting. You see, recently they found the killer of the Gilgo Beach murders. That happened in Long Island. I mean, they knew it was him. They just had to have more evidence that it was him. Anyway, he confessed and he got, sentenced or whatever. And, there's just nobody at home. Like you're saying, don't you feel bad? And he's like, to him, it's like drinking a cup of coffee. Like he doesn't, that way to look at people as people is not a thing for them. And it's not for narcissists either. Like narcissists use people like objects. They don't have feeling for them.
For them.
Other than I'm mad because you won't do something for me.
Yeah. Or what you can or cannot do for me.
Yeah.
The service that the human provides. Yeah.
So I think sometimes in trying to understand those brains, it actually helps in therapy to explain in drastic terms, like how people operate.
Yeah.
especially if they're saying that at least 1 in 7 people's a narcissist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So you've definitely met one before, at least, you know.
Another thing I read that I found interesting was that watching or listening to true crime is an emotional regulation skill
Yeah.
because it activates the system, right? Like it activates like the anxiety or the fear, like the distress, but you're not close enough to it that it is your own. And then being able to get some kind of resolution by
It's the
the end of the
catharsis part.
episode. Hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, that's
But
interesting.
there's something also tantalizing about coming up with your own theory about what you think it is, too. For the things that aren't clean cut, you know, like caught, charged, you know. There was one that went viral right after the crash, and it was called Maternal Instincts. Have you heard of this one?
No, but so by the title, it's going to be another child.
Well, much like the woman, Laura Owens, that they talk about in Love Trapped, this woman pretended to be pregnant, had like gender reveals, fake sonogram, like the whole 9 years, was wearing a belly to trick her fiance or boyfriend or whatever he was. And everybody around him knew, like in some capacity, she's got to be lying, you know? And to think like, I mean, and you also think about the other people in the story, like, dude, you haven't seen your girlfriend naked in 9 months?
Yeah, that was my thought. Like, how are you wearing this belly?
They kept trying to tell him, and he was just like, meh.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character, and if you watch it, but she has somebody she knows who is having a child, and she murders her and takes the baby, cuts the baby out. Yeah, this is really disturbing. In that, you know, it's so interesting how, and I'm sure society plays a role in women going to extremes to fulfill these roles they think that they should have. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but culture definitely plays a role in that. And the baby didn't live either, because the fuck, you know? But that was one where, you know, they were untangling all of these lies.
Yeah.
I think it just really caught up with her, because obviously you should be showing by now, and then you literally go buy a suit, and then, like, what were you thinking you were gonna do? I mean, obviously...
Yeah, that's what was intriguing to me about this story. Like, isn't there a level of anxiety of like how you're gonna see this through, or like keeping up the lie, and like how you're gonna...
Yeah.
But maybe there's not. Like, maybe if that emotional piece is cut off, it's, you know, you're not having those feelings.
I mean, I think that's maybe the only thing you might see some of these individuals
Like getting
get
caught,
upset
you know,
about.
the anxiety of being
Yeah.
caught.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because we struggle with the idea that other people's brains can work so vastly different from ours. We often give people the benefit of the doubt because can you imagine? You know? You think you know someone. And I'm not trying to start paranoia, but like it's so hard for us to even just with narcissists, right? It's so hard to wrap our minds around somebody who couldn't care.
Yeah.
You know?
And our natural human instinct is that we want to make sense of a story. Like everything is a story, right? So like giving benefit of the doubt or trying to figure out why, and like this must be the reason why. Like we don't sit well in there not being like a resolution or a reason to why something is.
Do you think that maybe some of your aversion to some of these stories is, yes, maybe that's just not, you don't have a big need for that, to touch that darkness, but like also your husband's a cop. And I feel like people who work in law enforcement, they already know all this,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, and I've thought about it too, like that element of my husband being in law enforcement, that this is not an interest of his either. Like him and I have a similar like I guess experience of it. Like I'm picturing us like, all right, what do you want to watch? And like seeing these things and meh, meh. And for him it is like, yeah, like I've experienced some of this stuff like firsthand, and I'm just not really interested in that. Although I will say, when it comes to actually, like on the rare occasion that there will be something that we'll watch together or like something that we'll talk about, it is interesting to hear his perspective of it. But he'll like dissect it in a different way, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, that would never happen, or I can't believe they got to, those types of
Yeah.
things. And also for me too, like I often say, like, I hear a lot of like terrible shit. Like, I want rainbows and unicorns when I'm ingesting things for pleasure,
Yeah.
which is not all true because I do enjoy like a psychological thriller, but I think there's also this idea of like, I know that's not real. I think there's also like a fear of, for me personally, listening to this or watching this is like, this is real. Like, this could really happen. And I think safety for me is living in ignorance. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
totally unaware that bad things happen or like totally like aloof when I go out in public or anything like that. But it's not something that I want to focus my attention on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's maybe the split between the population is people
Yeah.
who watch this to feel safe because they're looking at what do I need to look for,
Hmm.
and the people who don't want to know about it because that's what makes them feel safe.
Yeah, it creates like, oh, new fear unlocked. And I think maybe there's, as I'm talking out loud, like maybe there's a caveat that like, because my husband is in law enforcement, like I feel a level of safety. Like I know that he is being vigilant. So it's almost like I don't have to carry that in certain, like when I'm with him,
Yeah,
you know?
that makes sense.
Hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
I think I worry more for my children with that stuff. Like when you were talking about like the crimes against children, like that. That's
Yeah, and I can understand that, and
yeah.
that's why I tell people don't fucking watch that one.
Yeah.
But especially, and I work with law enforcement too, and like that's the big thing is like they can see things and it doesn't bother me when it's children. Mm-mm, no way.
Hmm.
Especially if they have children, that's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It's like
Yeah,
nonsense.
generally, I don't watch things like that. I didn't really realize what I was getting into, I think.
Sure.
And then I needed like a good ending and it just didn't come, unfortunately. And but that's also necessary because we want to be able to advocate for better systems
Hmm.
and protect children. So, yeah, I don't know.
I also
Do
feel
they
like there's a subset of this too. Like it's not like we're talking about like true crime and the dark side of humanity, but then like even in this episode we're talking about there are different even like genres within the genre.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love a good cult documentary too.
Yeah.
Whoo, I love that.
That I could get behind.
But those are
I agree.
narcissists. So again,
Yeah.
it's sort of this like it's still a darkness in our
Hmm.
in humanity. And it's just curious. It's just like how does that happen and how do people get involved and turn a blind eye? And maybe that's part of it is if I watch these things then that won't happen to me.
Yeah.
But more so I just find the brain fascinating
Yeah.
and what it's capable of.
Yeah. And I had
It-
no idea about that with the brain scans.
oh yeah, it's you can Google it. It's
I didn't,
fascinating.
but it makes sense. And it's reminding me of like, so that part of the, so like, right, our brains develop from like back forward
Yeah.
and how that is the last part to develop. So yeah, it makes sense that that would be the one, if you're experiencing all of these traumas, that would be the one that would be like mostly affected. And it reminds me of
Mm-hmm.
addiction too. Like like we say the sooner that somebody starts using, the more like brain damage is done
Oh
because if
yeah.
you start using it 14 or 16, when that front part of your brain is not fully developed, it is going to affect the way that that develops versus like, you know, it is fully developed and you start using at 30, that's going to be a different situation.
Yeah, and it also pulls into play like corporal punishment and how we know that that affects brain development now. So while people minimize that by saying, well, I'm just spanking, right? That we use softer language to minimize the damage, you're still doing more damage than you think you are
Yeah.
by doing that. And not that they're going to turn out serial killers just from spanking, but like it's going to affect them. They're going to internalize that. And having a kid fear you is not the route I think you want to take. That doesn't teach them anything except mommy's scary, and you're supposed to be their safety and security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So of course that's going to rewire things as they're developing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did I scare you with this one?
I'm good. I'm walking away with one that I want to watch. I think I'm going to watch
The Staircase?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a podcast, right?
You can find it in podcasts that covered it.
Okay.
In fact, Crime Junkie is one of the podcasts that I sometimes listen to. They do one-off episodes. They might have the Staircase. I imagine they have the Staircase in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it was a big deal for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever happened to that guy, but
yeah.
yeah, it was a good one. You can probably just Google The Staircase in like Spotify and find something.
And find
about
it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not scared.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I'm leaving with a deeper understanding of the intrigue.
Yeah. And now you know there's a black box in your car too. So drive safely.
Drive safely.
And to our viewers as well. Listen, again, if these things become too much, if you're watching or listening to these things, if you're not more informed, but you're more fearful, paranoid, losing sleep, constant checking, don't watch these things anymore. Give yourself a break, or like Chelsea's saying, like maybe just listen to it rather than watch it. Maybe that's a little bit more, or just don't. Maybe it's not your thing.
Maybe it's not your thing. And that's okay too.
Yeah. All right, folks, this episode, thanks for joining us and listening to it. And if you liked the episode, subscribe or follow or whatever you do. There's also a way to give us fan mail, which I would love for people to do.
Fan mail? Oh,
yeah, I think in Buzzsprout, or you might be able to find it in Spotify. There's a link for fan mail. And I think that would be really cool if we could get some fan mail. We could do a whole episode on fan mail.
Yeah.
That would be funny.
Like a topic that any of our followers are interested
sure.
in.
Ask questions, give us a topic, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, subscribe, follow, whatever you do here, and we'll see you next time.
See you next session.